Welcome to the Sports Scouting Report podcast with Lee Brecheen.
Hi, everyone. Lee Brecheen with the Sports Scouting Report. Thanks for joining us today. Hope everybody's having a good week, and I'm ready for work to be over, which it never ends for me. You know, we're working on Louisiana Football Magazine right now. Me, Jace Lejeune, my mom, actually, who's 70 years old, young. Dolores Thompson is working, and my stepdad, Carl Thompson, and we're just working hard on our magazine for the 24th annual year. Be sure to get a copy. Go online, lafootballmagazine.com, and pre-order a North or South copy. We've got a great lineup today. We've got college notes, a lot of college football stuff. We've got a segment about wide receivers and DBs. This is really for parents, just to kind of, I guess it's for the people that don't really understand football, just to kind of go through what is a wide receiver and a defensive back and break it down. There's several different types of DBs. There's several types of different receivers. So we're going to break that down, the pros and cons of your son playing receiver in high school or DB to get to college. What's harder? What's harder to get a scholarship? We're also going to have our recruit of the week, which is going to be Peyton Todd from West Monroe High School, a punter committed to LSU. We're also going to talk about the NBA draft, all the underclassmen that are in the draft, and how that could change the SEC in basketball once they play again. A lot of great players have declared. Some signed with an agent, some haven't. Some are staying in, some are still on the fence. We'll talk about the deadline and also boxing. You know, we don't really talk about boxing much, but, you know, Mike Tyson's training right now at the age of 53. And now Evander Holyfield's training at the age of 58. Something's up. So it's going to be interesting. We're going to talk about that too. Instead of having our traditional mailbag, we're going to be talking about boxing at the end of the show. But let's go ahead and go into the show and talk about the first segment, which is really we don't really have a segment built for this. It was an idea I came up with for parents. And even, look, all of us that listen that know football, you're going to know everything I'm saying. Our listeners, we got a lot of people that know football. You know, I've been in it, 35 years, practically my whole life, and started our magazine back in 97. Started scouting in 1991. And actually started watching, and before I even knew that I would be a scout, going back to 1981 when I was really, really young, going to games with my dad, who was a youth league coach, and always dissecting the game. And I think I got it from him because he was a defensive guy, and all he would do is just dissect players' upside. You know, hey, this is what he does, this is what he can't do, this is upside. This is what you got to do to play this position, and yada, yada, yada. So, but this segment's based on wide receivers and defensive backs. We're just going to go through what a wide receiver is and a DB. And look, back in the 80s and the 70s and 60s, this was a very simpler position, receiver. You didn't have slot receivers back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, or they didn't term them that. And you didn't have three types. Now, if you look in the NFL, you basically have three types of receivers. You've got the short guy who's not really short. To us, it's not short. It's 6 foot to 5'8". So you got the Edelmans of the world, the Tim DeWights who used to play for the Falcons. You got these short guys that can line up and be a weapon and also take reverses. Some of these guys return punts even in the NFL. I don't know why they do in these $100 million contracts. I wouldn't have my star receiver returning punts. But and then you have flankers and you have split ends. So you really have three receivers. And you have that in high school now. So it's bled all the way down to high school to where high schools have the 4 wide, meaning 4 receivers going out for catching the ball, 4 players running routes, and you got a slot, you got a flanker, a split in, And sometimes you even have a tight end out in the flats or a jumbo player. So in college, it's really gotten to where everything is broken down by what you can do. And if you're going to be a slot scholarship receiver, you better be special. Meaning you better be the freakish, most gifted, fastest, most dominant player on the field as a playmaker in high school. Not on a high school level, on a college upside level. Meaning that's when you got to have an eye to say, this guy's special, he's different. So slot receivers, it's probably the hardest position to get a scholarship from if you're in high school. Because you might think you're great because you're a great high school player, but you might not have the speed and the gifted ability. You got to have some great hips, some great speed. You got to be super tough. You got to have good hands. And to get a scholarship out of high school to the big schools, a lot of these short kids who are 5'8", 5'9", 5'10", 5'11", will slip through the cracks because there's so many receivers today. You know, 7-on-7, it's a receiver's world. And you have these programs in the summer to where, you know, it just seems like, you know, watching this, I'm just sharing this with everybody, but there are more wide receivers out there for recruiting than any position. I can just speak for Louisiana. There's tons of receivers. There's more receivers than scholarships. And so it's a position that if you want to play it, you've got to be the best because there's so much competition to get a scholarship. And if you're not 6'4", going to be a flanker, and you don't run a 4'6", 4'5", weigh 190, 200 pounds, or if you're not 5'8", 5'9", 5'10", 5'11", and you're special, like a Jarvis Landry, he's 5'11", to give you an idea. Odell Beckham, 5'11". Those guys are really slot guys that can play some flanker. Or split in. You know, these guys are 6'1", 6'2". Again, you got to be able to run, you got to have size, and you got to be special to go to the big schools. And a lot of these kids make it to the NFL because they're not measurable. They're not the tall guy, they're not the fastest guy, and they end up being productive college players. And if you watch the draft this year or the last 30 years like I have, a lot of players drop in the draft because of their height and their speed. But people like Belichick, people like Coach Harbaugh with the Baltimore Ravens, they don't care if you went to Akron College, Ohio U, or Western Arizona. They're going to draft you, and they're going to say, I got me a steal. I got somebody who can play the game. I don't care what the helmet is. I don't care what the school is. But it's really hard to get a scholarship for a receiver. And just remember that. Defensive back has 3 positions. Basically, I think 4. You've got free safeties, strong safeties, and you got corners. But I think you need to have 2 types of corners if we're talking college football on your team. One corner needs to be very aggressive and play the run. You would like both of them to be, but it's hard to find a corner who can play the run and play the pass. That's why they got nickel backs. That's another DB. A nickel is somebody that's not fast enough to be outside, but he goes inside and guards one of the slower receivers and hopefully can keep up with that person. But a nickel back is not big enough to be a safety and not fast enough to be one of your corners outside like Stingley. But to play free safety, you better be a bad dude. You better be a hitter. You better be good in space, and you got to be the quarterback of the defense. To be a strong safety, you better be very tough. You better be a big hitter, and you better be able to play the run. And you better be a pretty good pass coverage guy. To play corner, college football's changed so much, but to play corner, it would help to be able to play the run, meaning hit. Not all corners are aggressive. A la Deion Sanders with the Dallas Cowboys, Atlanta Falcons. One of the greatest football players ever. He was not known for hitting. You know, Greedy Williams was like that at LSU. If you're running a post pass or you're running a deep route, Greedy's on you. You're not going to probably catch the ball. But if you're going to run the ball, that's not his thing. But like I said, corners, they're all types. Some just like to be a great defender. Some like to play the run. Now, I'm a defensive guy. I want both my starting cornerbacks to be very physical. I want them both to be hitters. I want them to be able to guard the pass. I want them to be able to guard inside, in and out routes, and deep routes. But you can't always get all what you're trying to get. I mean, that's why you don't have a defense in college football where everybody's first round. Maybe some Alabama defenses have been that way, maybe some like LSU this past year. But a lot of college coaches try and turn speed guys into DBs because they don't have good hands. So if you can't catch the ball, they put you at DB because you can run. But a lot of that doesn't work out. I've seen a lot of those experiments not really work out. One is Manny Netherly, who, as an example, was signed as a receiver from Texas, signed with LSU, 6'3", about 190, ran a 4.45, played quarterback in high school in the Houston, Texas area. They moved him to DB. He just could not run with these receivers, and he was not instinctive, and he wasn't physical. And it's hard to play DB. You really have to be tough. Or you better be a 4.3 40 or 4.4 guy like Derek Stingley. But Derek actually plays the run. And the reason why Derek Stingley is so special, it's not because he can take away the short routes and the deep routes. He can come up and play the run because he's 6'1", about 200, and he's physical. He's the complete DB. Stingley could play safety if they needed him to. Which I don't think they'd do that to him, but I think he'd be the best safety on LSU's team in 2020 because they lost Delpit, and they're relying on Jordan Tolles to come in from Maryland and start, or Maurice Hampton, who's a youngster out of Memphis, Tennessee. So, if you're a parent out there, it's easier to get a scholarship as a corner than it is as a receiver, because it's hard to find a very good lockdown corner that's 5'11" to 6'1", that's physical. There's very few corners out there that have those two ingredients, physical and can guard speed and instinctive. Those are not, not everybody checks those boxes. There's a lot of them that can run, and there's a lot of them that have the size. But to have everything, it's very rare. There's so many wide receivers in this state every year. There's so many good players that play wide receiver that get overlooked. But I hope that educated some parents that are not, into football maybe that or knows the details. We just think of a receiver as being a receiver, right? But no, it's more than that. DBs, there's different strengths and different positions, and you can't play free safety at DB if you're not physical. You'll play corner, and then you better be super fast. And so these coaches, when they sign these kids, and this is what I look at on upside, you see a kid that is, let's say, 6 foot tall, 170 coming out of high school, but super fast, super smart, super aggressive. But that kid played quarterback, let's say, in high school. So he never had any film on him at DB or receiver. But the kid's a competitor, and he's super tough, super strong, super fast. He's going to weigh about 185, 190. A guy like that, I'm thinking, is Corey Webster, who was an LSU All-SEC DB from St. James, played quarterback at St. James. Nick Saban saw that he could be a great athlete, either at receiver or DB, and auditioned him at corner, and he found a home, and the rest is history. Corey was a starter for the New York Giants and played 7-8 years in the NFL, was one of the best DBs in the league, retired young. But that's a great example that Corey Webster didn't really have a position for college, but he was such a great athlete and so tough mentally and physically that when he played corner at LSU, he was about 190, 6 foot tall, and he could play the run like Nick likes all his corners to do, and he could play the deep ball and short routes. He could do it all. And you have to see it in your eyes. You have to see something in a kid that doesn't have a position coming out of high school. He's playing the position of the high school where they need him most. And that's what you have to do sometimes. That's called being a team player. You play where they need you, not so much where the recruiters need you. And it's always going to be about the high school, and I'm all about that. Coaches listening, high school coaches, I'm all about if you need your guy to play quarterback, yet he's a DB for college, then, man, that's where you need to put him. And I know sometimes these coaches take a lot of heat from parents about my kid needs to be at this position. Well, the kid needs to be where you can help the team win. The team comes first, and if a college recruiter sees something in a kid, then they'll move him to his college position. I've always said stats are overrated. Stats doesn't give you a scholarship. Your upside does. Your upside is your upside. So if you're either D1 and you're just a sleeper, you're still a D1 upside guy. If you don't have D1 stuff, then you're not D1. That's why you have 1AA, D2, D3, junior college, prep school to kind of, sharpen the toolbox there on getting better. But I hope people enjoyed the segment. It's just pointing out, going in depth for some positions. And here's another thing before we finish this segment. I've seen a lot of big receivers coming out of Louisiana. I'm just talking about Louisiana high school football. I've seen a lot of guys 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", not tight ends, but receivers. They don't have good hands. And they might not ever have good hands. Maybe you can't even correct that. But I see these guys signing D1 scholarships because coaches love size. And I've seen a lot of big guys that don't run really good routes in high school, and they don't have good hands too. So you have to correct that, which is tough, meaning they're going to redshirt, right? And these guys might grow into tight ends in college. But just because somebody's big doesn't mean that you're going to be a great player in college. You might get the opportunity, but it doesn't mean you're going to be great. You have to work on your craft. And a lot of these big guys, a lot of them don't have the speed. And that's why you have slot receivers, and that's why you have flankers. And so a lot of your split ends are these guys that, 6'2", 6'3", they run 4'6", they weigh 200, 205. Once they get over 210, you're becoming a tight end, or you're becoming an H-back type of player. Moss was like that with LSU. He was an in-between. He was a great athlete, great hands, great blocker. He did it all, but he didn't get drafted because he was 6'1" when they measured him, which is really short for a tight end. We're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, I'm going to be talking about our recruit of the week. Our recruit of the week. We'll be right back.
Great news, Louisiana Football Magazine fans. We have renovated our website. So make sure to go to lafootballmagazine.com in order to check out our podcasts, learn more about a parent consultant, read profiles on recruits and coaches around the state of Louisiana, and finally, also start your pre-order your Louisiana Football Magazine copy, North or South version for this upcoming season. Finally, check out our article this week on Oak Grove tight end Dalton Allen. So if you want to get your recruiting fix, go to lafootballmagazine.com today.
Welcome back, segment 2, our recruit of the week. Before we do that, our first segment was about receivers and DBs. My favorite safeties of all time, because I thought they were the most aggressive. I'm a defensive guy. I thought Chad Jones and LaRon Landry were two of the best safeties I've ever seen play football at any level. Chad Jones played at Southern Lab and, 6'2", about 220 in high school, could run 4.5, and he was ferocious when he'd come up and hit you. I mean, it wasn't even fair. Chad signed with LSU, unfortunately got in a wreck, and his career was over for football. It was a high draft pick for the Giants. LaRon Landry's one of those kids I was talking about that didn't have a position basically for college, didn't have the film, was a quarterback for Hahnville, but became a free safety at LSU, and he would tattoo you. I mean, this guy was 6'2". He ended up being about 210 his senior year at LSU. Ended up being like a heavyweight, one of the strongest men in the state. One of the strongest DBs in the NFL. He looked like a linebacker at 230 when he played later in his career with the Colts. But, again, those are examples of kids. The greatest player that I've ever seen play DB that never made it in college, and I wish he would have, but Daryl Johnson was a safety at O.P. Walker, and he played with Buster Davis, who played for LSU and was a first-round pick, and several players on this O.P. Walker team. This is the one that Frank Wilson coached that went to the Superdome and finished runner-up for a state championship. Daryl Johnson was every bit of 6'2", about 210, ran a 4.5, and he was better than LaRon Landry. And they were in the same class coming out of high school. Now, how scary is that? One of the best I've ever seen was LaRon Landry. And in the same recruiting class, same year, Daryl Johnson from O.P. Walker signs. But Daryl Johnson was the greatest DB that I've ever seen play in 30 years that he didn't qualify. He went to junior college and didn't finish. It was just saddened by that. He was so gifted and so good and so aggressive and ran 4.45, 6'2", 210, was phenomenal. Daryl Johnson, remember that name. Ask Frank Wilson about Daryl Johnson, who he coached. If anybody ever runs into Frank Wilson, say, who is Daryl Johnson that Lee Brecheen is talking about? How good was he? And I guarantee you Frank will tell you he was one of the best he's ever seen. But our recruit of the week comes from West Monroe, Louisiana. West Monroe High School, punter, Peyton Todd. Now, people remember this name. Peyton, Peyton, Todd, Todd. 6'5", 220 pounds. One of the best punters I've seen in 30 years come out of Louisiana. It's really hard to find a pro punter coming out of high school. I've only seen one. I've only seen one kid who could punt like it came out of a ball machine in high school with height, meaning with the height. Tall punters is what they're looking for. Donnie Jones at Catholic of Baton Rouge, who came out of high school at 6'2", close to 190 pounds, ended up being about 220. Played 15 years in the NFL, just recently retired after 2018 season. He was the only one that I've seen going back to 91, even in the 80s. The ball would go in the air and it looked like you lost the ball. It goes so high. The hang time was pro hang time in distance. Well, Peyton Todd from West Monroe, his leg actually is stronger than Donnie Jones at this stage. He's got a bazooka. When it comes off his foot at 6'5", I swear it looks like it goes 700 feet in the air. And there's two things they look for in college for a punter: hang time, because guys can't return it if the coverage team gets there. You got to always fair catch it, which is great for the team because field position is always going to be tough for the other team. So, and then distance. This kid can punt 70 yards in the air, and he can kick the ball in the sky where the referee loses it. Like, you can't even see the ball anymore. And he's 6'5", 220, and he also starts at linebacker for West Monroe. Now, how many punters have you ever heard of that is all state in punting and already, I think, a pro prospect? And he's a starting linebacker for West Monroe in Class 5A. Now, Class 5A, okay? And a pretty good linebacker. Tough kid. I want this guy. I can't wait for Peyton Todd to hit campus at LSU because, Van Rossenberg's going to be graduating after, seems like 20 years from Zachary. Peyton Todd will be the starter, and he'll be all SEC, I think, every year he punts. It's a shame he'll never get to play linebacker because you don't want your punter playing linebacker in college. You can't have that. But Peyton Todd, people remember that name. Now, I did see one other punter that was phenomenal in high school, Brad Wing. Brad Wing was really good at Parkview Baptist. I mean, Brad just wasn't as consistent as Donnie was in high school. And then Brad became an All-American at LSU as a punter, and he'll be remembered for the fake punting where he was kind of showing up the other team, and they called a flag on him where he scored a touchdown. And I still think Brad Wing should be punting in the NFL right now. Consistency was always his problem. Brad had a bazooka leg too. But I think Peyton Todd is way ahead of both of these kids. He's way ahead of Brad Wing, way ahead of Donnie Jones, which were the two best punters I'd ever seen at LSU. Me, growing up. But remember the name Peyton Todd. What a big-time punter, man. And look, he's not just the punter that's committed from Louisiana. I think Peyton Todd's the best punter. If there's a better punter in the United States, I'd like to see some film on him. I would have a hard time believing there is a better punter in Louisiana or in the United States than Peyton Todd. This kid, I can't wait for this guy to get to Tiger Stadium and put the ball on the 5 or the 1 or the 2 consistently to pin the other team back. You know, last week I was talking about how big Florida's punter was. Florida's punter last year pinned everybody deep, and it kept them in games. It's so important to have a good punter. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to have our college football notes. We'll be right back.
Parents, are you looking for advice on getting your high school athlete recruited by the right college? Lee Brecheen is your answer. Lee has been doing it for over 30 years. He knows the ropes, and more importantly, he knows the people. Lee offers turnkey service from evaluation, creating highlight tapes in the correct format, and complete guidelines for effective communication with the schools. No matter the sport, girl or boy, no matter what grade your child is in, let Lee Brecheen help match your child to the right college fit. Go to our website, lafootballmagazine.com, and get connected today.
Welcome back. I hope you're enjoying the show. Before we get into our college football notes, I want to just tell people, please download a show. If you love the show, please download it. That's how we grow. Download any show. It's free to do that, and it just helps us with our stats. And also, I want to promote this. And we're delaying it a couple of weeks because I want to get all the information in. But if you're a dad listening to the show, or a mom, or you're a relative of someone who plays high school football, like if you have a nephew, a grandson, and you're in Louisiana, heck, even if you're not in Louisiana, we're doing a poll, okay, of the strongest players in Louisiana that are going to be seniors for 2021 class for football, high school football. We're trying to find all the players that have the strongest cleans, the strongest bench presses, and the strongest max squats in the weight room. It's kind of like the Iron Man award that we can do on our show. We have interviewed over 1,200 kids to get their height, their weight, and their maxes on these in the gym. I grew up loving weightlifting. I know a lot about weightlifting because I grew up, doing a lot of that in the gym. I haven't done it lately, but we've got some kids that we're going to talk about that weigh 170 pounds, and they can bench press twice their weight. They can clean twice their weight. They can squat twice their weight. We're not just looking if you can just bench press 300 and you weigh 300. That's not super strong. We're looking for stats on kids that, are 190, or maybe they're 220 or 250 in weight, and they, like I said, they can bench twice their weight, they can squat twice their weight, they can hand clean twice their weight, or power clean. And so write to us at lafootballmagazine.com, and in about 3 weeks, I'd mentioned we were going to do it next week, but we want to get everything in. I don't want to do it if we don't have everything. I'm a stickler for stats. I'm a stickler for interviewing every kid, and we're not done interviewing all the recruits. And so, kids, we don't know by memory, or we don't know everybody's bench maxes and squat maxes and clean maxes. We don't know. Sometimes coaches don't tell us that when we're interviewing them over the phone. So if you're a parent or grandparent, or you have a nephew coming up for the class of 2021, even class of 2022 or 23, send in those stats to lafootballmagazine.com. We already got a handful of kids in the state that are really super strong. that can do twice their weight on these three categories. And look, it's not easy. When I was in high school, I'll mention this to my audience because I was proud of it. And I'm like a lot of kids probably, if you're a parent listening, I couldn't gain any weight. I mean, I ate everything. I ate like a whole thing of ice cream every week. I mean, I ate 3 sandwiches for lunch, plus a bag of chips. I'd eat a whole pizza. You know, I couldn't gain any weight. I stayed at 160. And I was so proud in my senior year. I got up to 165. And I was strong. I mean, we would weightlift every day year-round in high school. That's when weightlifting started becoming really important back in the 80s. And I remember I just took to weightlifting. At first, I hated it. But then I started to like it. And at 165 pounds, I was so proud of this. At my strongest point, I bench pressed 305 one time. And I was proud of that because I weighed 165 pounds now. And bench pressing 305 at 165. And it was rough, but I did it. They didn't, look, when you do the max, it was all me, meaning they didn't push it up. It was barely. And so I could bench press about 285 a couple of reps at 165 pounds. Again, I couldn't gain any weight. And if you're a parent listening, I just couldn't put the weight on. And look, there's nothing you can do about it sometimes. You're just going to have to gain your weight in college sometimes. Now, if you're a big lineman, you can put weight on a little bit better because you don't have to keep your 4.5 speed. I ran a 4.59 40 was my fastest time in high school, but I only weighed 165 pounds. And, you know, again, linemen, they don't have to run the 40 in a great time. Just be able to have good feet, and they can put the weight on. I want to go ahead and talk about our college notes. This past week, LSU got a commitment from a running back in Ohio, Corey Kiner, who is 5'10", 205 pounds. I love this commitment. I hope he signs with LSU. And I tell people that, and they go, man, why are you saying that? Well, because he's just committed. It's a handshake. And, you know, kid's a 10-hour drive away right now, and I hope that he does sign with LSU because here's a guy that you can tell is basically a carbon copy of Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And when I look at him run and I see his height, I don't think he's 5'10", which I don't care. Everybody said Clyde was 5'10" when he was at Catholic High. He's 5'7". Corey's probably more like 5'8.5", in that range. I just looked at him. I could tell he's not 5'10". But again, throw it out the window. I think LSU took this kid out of Cincinnati, Ohio, because they see a lot of Clyde. They're trying to clone what got him the championship, which is smart. The kid can catch the ball in the backfield. He's got the same kind of lower body, powerful legs. And if you watch his film, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for an all-purpose back with power who runs hard. And that's what Corey is. And he's one of the top players in the country that can do that. And it's a home run if they can get him to sign a scholarship, come February or early signing date, whatever that's going to be because of the coronavirus. We don't know if that early signing date will be pushed back, which I think it should be. And look, let me tell you the history of Ohio and LSU. So this will be fun for listeners. Here are some players that LSU got out of Ohio that were highly recruited. Some worked out, some didn't. The one that worked out was Spencer Ware. Spencer came out of Cincinnati, 5'9", 5'10", about 210, was a quarterback. Remember we're talking about early receivers, DBs, playing a position they're not going to play in college? Well, Spencer was a quarterback, and LSU moved him to running back, just like they did with Terrence McGee at Franklinton. And Spencer was a great player at LSU from Cincinnati, Ohio. Now, a couple of players that LSU signed out of Ohio that didn't work out were both from the Cincinnati area also. Eric Ellington back in the 80s was a parade All-American skilled player, about 5'7", 165, was all-world, but it never happened. He never played it down. And then George Brown, who came from the same high school as Spencer Ware, Winton Woods in Cincinnati, was an offensive lineman in really basically Ed Orgeron's first class. George, 6'7", 320 pounds. And actually, George transferred to Miami, and he's transferred again. So, it hadn't worked out for George in college. It doesn't always work out. I mean, he 6'7", 320 pounds, chiseled. Couldn't start at LSU, was always getting beat out, and then went to Miami, couldn't start. And I don't know where he's transferring now. But again, not all these kids work out. It's just the way it is. But that's the history we have on Ohio. Continue with notes. It's amazing that the running backs with the Kansas City Chiefs now that are from Louisiana. Darrell Williams played at John Ehret. You have Clyde Edwards now from LSU. Sardedrick West went to Spring Hill, which is now North Webster. A little college tidbit there. And also college notes, D. Anderson, a receiver for LSU that didn't play this past year, was suspended from DeSoto High School, has made it official going to Oklahoma State. D. Anderson is 6'6", 230 pounds. Let me tell you how great the receiving corps at LSU was. We all know about Terrace Marshall, Jamar Chase. Okay, we all know about the receivers at LSU, Justin Jefferson. But D. Anderson was actually ahead of those guys at one time. He's got his degree, got a year left. He was suspended 2 or 3 times at LSU. I think it was just maturity. And what's going to happen, you're going to see D. Anderson play at Oklahoma State this year and have a phenomenal year. And I think because he got all his maturity issues over with at LSU, I think he's learned. And here's a guy that never lacked talent, that can run a 4.6 40 when he's 230, 6'6". If he can get his weight down, he's actually faster than that. Out of DeSoto, Texas. And D. Anderson, look, LSU fans, don't get upset if he has a great 1 year with Oklahoma State because they throw the ball a lot. And he's just a guy that really started out, too, at LSU when things weren't clicking with the offense. So a little bit was the offense wasn't really there when he started his first 2 years also at LSU. And, like I said, he got suspended. He did get his degree. Good for the kid. And I wish D. Anderson a great future with Oklahoma State. I think he'll be their number one option in the long run, even though they got their number one guy back. He doesn't have the potential or the talent that D. Anderson has. D's going to probably get drafted if he does what he's supposed to do, which he didn't do at LSU. But I think it was mostly maturity. I think he's growing up now. And he's got a lot of talent. Also, in college notes, Alabama might be playing TCU in the first game of the football season. And it's really interesting because TCU's first game was with Cal Berkeley, at Cal Berkeley. And Alabama's first game was supposed to be USC in AT&T Stadium, Jerry World. But if you've read about it on ESPN, Alabama's trying to schedule TCU because these California teams might not can leave the state and travel. And so Alabama, TCU would be a better matchup to me. And I'll say this. If you're LSU fans listening, TCU has a better chance of beating Alabama than USC did. USC's not going to be that good this year. So I know Alabama's trying to get that game in, but it might end up being a loss. I think TCU's got a heck of a team coming back. We're going to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the NBA draft a little bit, about the underclassmen from the Southeastern Conference. We'll be right back.
Great news, Louisiana Football Magazine fans. We have renovated our website. So make sure to go to lafootballmagazine.com in order to check out our podcasts, learn more about a parent consultant, read profiles on recruits and coaches around the state of Louisiana, and finally, also start your pre-order your Louisiana Football Magazine copy, North or South version for this upcoming season. Finally, check out our article this week on Oak Grove tight end Dalton Allen. So if you want to get your recruiting fix, go to lafootballmagazine.com today.
Welcome back, Lee Brecheen. You listen to the Sports Scouting Report. Be sure to download one of our shows to help us grow. Also, I want to mention again, if you're a parent, an uncle, a grandfather, a grandmother, a mother, if your son is phenomenally strong in the clean, the bench, or the squat for maxes, if they power lift, please send in that information to lafootballmagazine.com. In about 3 weeks, we're going to mention the strongest players in Louisiana, pound for pound. And we're going to have the ones that are like twice their weight. You know, if you can bench twice your weight, squat twice your weight, or clean twice your weight, then you're going to be one of the kids we talk about as one of the strong. Now, it's very hard to see kids that can bench 400 pounds in high school. That's very rare. And I've always see about 2 or 3 in the state that can do it. And it's very rare to see someone that can squat 500 pounds in high school and clean. It's very rare to talk to a kid that can clean 300 in high school. You see some at 285, 275, but not many at 300. But we will have some of those kids that can do that. But be sure to send that information. We don't have everybody's information. We have interviewed over 1,200 kids, but it's not every kid in the state. And you don't have to be a prospect to be talked about. You can just be a strong player. So you don't have to be a prospect. And send that in, lafootballmagazine.com. We're going to talk about the NBA draft a little bit. I think the whole Southeastern Conference went to the draft, all the juniors. I mean, if every junior stays in the draft, that's a good player from the Southeastern Conference. I mean, the SEC is going to be watered down. I mean, outside of Kentucky and LSU. But I think Georgia is the most affected by this. Georgia's got 2 of their starters in the NBA draft that are underclassmen, and they're both going to stay in the draft. Probably the first pick in the draft, Anthony Edwards, who's a freshman, was really, really good this past year. 6'5", really could be a 2-guard or even a small forward, probably 2-guard. 6'5", probably 220 in weight, very strong. He's an NBA guy, can shoot the rock, can shoot threes, can it's back to the basket, can drive, can do it all. Losing Anthony Edwards is going to be huge to Georgia and Coach Crean. It's kind of hard to build a program. He was his first year, but heck, he signed him. And then they lose Rashawn Hammonds, their 6'9" forward, who's a junior, who said he's staying in the draft. Losing those 2 kids, it's tough, man. It's tough because they're not getting the Duke talent in basketball right now. Not even LSU talent. They're getting good talent. Don't get me wrong. Tom Crean's recruiting really good. But to lose those 2, and they already lost 3 seniors, and 2 of their seniors were 6'8" forwards. I mean, they're going to be short on size. I'm sure they'll bring in some projects. But Georgia's going to hurt from this. And those Georgia fans are going to expect Tom Crean to have Georgia at another level. You know how this works. And going into year 2, they're not going to be at another level when you lose 2 under. I thought at least Rashawn Hammonds would come back. You know, the SEC, Kentucky, this is not going to hurt Kentucky. They lose 4 juniors all the time, sometimes 5 and 6. But I will say this. 1 junior's going pro from Kentucky. He already got hired an agent. He didn't even play this year. Kalai Whitney, who's from the old high school, Roswell, in New Jersey, same old high school as Naz Reid, who played at LSU. Get this, people. He didn't even play last year. He wasn't hurt. He didn't even play. He's going to an NBA draft. Freshman. Didn't even play. But Kentucky losing Nick Richards. I think Nick Richards was the best player in the SEC conference last year. The center, 6'11". He really came into his own, man. That guy improved so much. Got bigger, stronger, became mean. It's what you always want. A coach will always say, man, if he would just wake up and the light would come on. And that's what happened with Nick Richards last year for Kentucky. I still think Kentucky would have won it all if they would have had a NCAA Madness tournament. You know, it's going to be interesting to see if Kyra Lewis stays in the draft, which he is, actually. But let's talk about the other ones that are going to stay in the draft. Ashton Hagans from Kentucky, 2-guard. Kyra Lewis from Alabama. I don't think he should go pro, but he's already signed with an agent. He's not coming out. He's coming out. Aaron Naismith didn't even play last year from Vanderbilt. It's going to be a first-round pick. He missed the whole – and he's a freshman. Isaac Okoro from Auburn. He was a phenomenal freshman, 6'5", about 6'6", about 220. He's staying in the draft. That hurts. I think that hurts Auburn a lot. Reggie Perry, I don't think should be going pro from Mississippi State, but I don't know. I don't think he's a first-round guy right now. I don't know why. Just a lot of people love him. He's 6'10". I don't think he showed up half the year. Emmanuel Quickly from Kentucky staying in the draft. It's going to be a great two-guard or point guard. James Wiseman from Memphis is probably going to be one of the first picks in the draft behind Anthony Edwards, a 7-foot center from Memphis. We all know he couldn't play the rest of the year because of some violations prior to his being at Memphis. But Wiseman was supposed to be the player of the year in college basketball as a true freshman, and I think he'll be probably the second pick. There's some great players in that first round that are juniors, not in the SEC, like Trey Jones, point guard from Duke. Trey's a great point guard. Vernon Carey, 6'11" center from Duke, freshman. Cole Anthony, great point guard from North Carolina, just was on a bad team. Jalen Smith from Maryland, LSU fans remember Jalen Smith, 6'9", 250, great power forward. Tyrese Maxey, I think the best Kentucky front court guy out of the whole group, out of Hagens and all those guys. I think Tyrese Maxey's got the most upside. The Texas native freshman is going to go high in the draft from Kentucky. And I like this Obi Toppin from Dayton, 6'10", 6'9", power forward, junior. I think he's going to be a great player. What I don't like is Emmett Williams being in the draft from LSU. I don't think Emmett's going to get drafted. He doesn't have a position. He's barely 6'6", about 220, 225. He's not big enough to be a power forward or a small forward. He can't play two guard. And in the D League, I don't think that's going to work out. He's going to have to be a Europe guy, I think. I really believe that. This is my opinion. But I think Emmett Williams, he gave his heart and soul to LSU as far as aggression and rebound and played over his head for his size. I mean, the guy played center at 6'5.5". Think about that. Playing center in the SEC at 6'5.5", not even 6'6". Long, though. He was long. But I wish Emmett Williams would come back. Really do. And you've got guys that are trying to think about coming back from the draft or staying in the draft. Darius Days needs to come back. He's not going to get drafted if he stays in the draft from LSU. I think he needs to get in better condition. He needs to be more consistent. Javonte Smart's not ready for the NBA or the D League from Scotlandville. He needs to come back. I don't think he would get drafted. I hear that from some GMs that are friends of mine in the NBA. I don't think he would get drafted. Trendon Watford, he'd have a chance to go to a D League, but I don't think he'll get drafted. And if he does, late second. So this kid's too talented to come out and go late second. He really is. Trendon needs to come back to school, man. He could be a lottery pick in another year. The freshman from Birmingham Mountain Brook High School, 6'8", great player. But there's a lot of kids in the NBA draft that are probably going to pull out. They've extended it because of the coronavirus. They've extended it on the timeline of coming out of the draft, and it's going to be interesting to see what players come out. June 25th is the extension. It was April 26th, right? So now they've extended a little bit. The draft is June 25th, but they've extended it, to pull your name out. There's a lot of players. Missouri's got 3 players in the draft as juniors, and they need all those guys to come back. If they lose those 3 juniors, they're going to be rebuilding. But I think Arkansas's got 3 juniors that are in the draft. But Arkansas had a great recruiting class. The NBA is going to be a great draft if all these guys stay in the draft. It's one of the most talented junior groups in a long time. We're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, and we're going to talk about boxing. That's right, boxing. We'll talk a little bit Mike Tyson. We'll be right back.
Parents, are you looking for advice on getting your high school athlete recruited by the right college? Lee Brecheen is your answer. Lee has been doing it for over 30 years. He knows the ropes, and more importantly, he knows the people. Lee offers turnkey service from evaluation, creating highlight tapes in the correct format, and complete guidelines for effective communication with the schools. No matter the sport, girl or boy, no matter what grade your child is in, let Lee Brecheen help match your child to the right college fit. Go to our website, lafootballmagazine.com, and get connected today.
Welcome back. Thanks for everybody listening to us. I hope you're enjoying the show, by the way, whether you're driving or you're sitting at home in front of your computer or you have us on your cell phone. Tell your friends, man. Tell your friends about our show and send it to friends. If you're, this week we were top heavy with LSU, but, in other shows we do the other colleges. We talk about Tulane and UL and Southern and other schools. It's just this week there was a lot of LSU news. And I hope you enjoyed the Recruit of the Week, Peyton Todd out of West Monroe, and also our Receiver DB segment, and our college notes. We're going to now talk about boxing and talk about, in the news. This is really crazy, but I love it, though, man. I grew up in an era like a lot of our listeners. If you're over 40 or you're in your mid to late 40s, 50s, and 60s, and 70s, and 80s, then, boxing was everything growing up. Today it's MMA. If we go another 10 years and we don't have enough boxing, the last two generations are not even going to know what boxing is all about. They're not going to see enough boxing matches. And I know the heavyweight, lightweight, middleweight, I grew up a fan of it. My dad was a fan of boxing. My dad boxed growing up. And I love boxing. I really do. I'm an old school guy. I like old country music and I like new country music. I like the old boxing. And I'm not an MMA guy. I'm just not. And I know there's a lot of people that would agree with me in a little bit. There's now people who love boxing and MMA. But I grew up watching, Larry Foreman. I grew up watching, Muhammad Ali, the late Muhammad Ali. I grew up watching Spinks, beat Muhammad Ali in an upset and then the rematch. I grew up watching George Foreman. I was able to see George Foreman when he was young, and then when he came back and came out of retirement at the age of 45. Now we know the George Foreman grills, right? Free plug, George. But boxing, was really phenomenal. The fights with Jerry Cooney and, all these great boxers that we had in the 70s and 80s, Lennox Lewis in the 90s. But my favorites were Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran. I mean, a lot of these great boxers, No Mas. And now we don't have that going on anymore. I can't even tell you who the best heavyweights are right now because I haven't seen it. I haven't followed it. But in the news is Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson, get this, at the age of 53, he hasn't boxed since 2006. That's when he retired, Mike Tyson. His last big fight, he was 35 years old. He's 53 years old. He's training. You ought to see the video I saw online. This guy looks like he's 20 years old still. And he's going to fight. He's going to come out of retirement at 53. That'll be the oldest former heavyweight champion ever to come out of retirement at 53. Everybody said that George Foreman was too old at 45. I remember Larry Holmes came out of retirement in his late 40s. But 53, man. But if you see Mike Tyson in this video of him training, man, he looks like he's in his 20s again. And, I mean, he doesn't look like he's just in shape. I mean, I'm talking about how fast he is, jabbing and everything, and he's in the ring with someone else. I mean, the guy looks like he's back. And he's been offered $1 million to fight rugby Australian players. I'm going to tell you, you might can laugh about this. I don't know if I'd want to get in the ring. I know I don't with any rugby players from Australia. Those are some tough dudes. But he's been offered $1 million a fight to fight rugby players in the ring. And in Australia, they think they can draw 10,000, 30,000, 40,000 people for these fights. And Mike's training to fight. And then then Holyfield found out about it, Evander Holyfield, and he's training. So, stay tuned. I mean, could we see Evander Holyfield at 57 fighting Mike Tyson at 53? Is that going to happen, or is it just something that, It's because there's the lockdown and they're training. Heck, I don't know. But wouldn't it be crazy if these two guys actually had a rematch at 57 years old and 53? Mike Tyson was the youngest heavyweight champion of all time at the age of 20. And he had 19 career knockouts. Most of those were in the first round. Evander Holyfield was 44-10 in his career and had 29 knockouts. Most of his losses later on. I didn't know this about Evander Holyfield, but I didn't know he was an Olympic boxer in the 1984 Olympics in Los Angeles. He won the bronze medal. That's right. Evander Holyfield was born in Alabama, lives in Atlanta, has a little place, I think, in New Orleans. But Holyfield was a boxer in the Olympics. I didn't know that in 1984 when it was in Los Angeles, won the bronze medal. And here's what's really cool about Evander. He fought at all different weight levels, lightweight, middleweight, and heavyweight. But, it'd be really crazy, though. I mean, Tyson, it doesn't shock me that he's going back to boxing at the age of 53. And it really would shock me if Evander got in a ring with anybody at 57, But these two guys are not normal boxers. I mean, they're both fit. They're not normal 50-somethings. I mean, but it's never been done before. Like I said, George Foreman was the oldest boxer to come out of retirement at 46. And we thought that was too old back then. And he did good. He won some matches. He fought for the heavyweight championship of the world when he came back. He didn't win it, but I don't think Tyson will be champion in the heavyweight division again. It's just, I guess the whole world will watch, and these promoters know that. And Mike can make a quick $1 million in a ring and knock a guy out in a round. I mean, I don't think these rugby guys can. I don't know. We'll see who wins. These rugby guys, they're pretty tough guys in Australia. That's a tough sport. But I think it's also a disadvantage for a rugby player to try and box Mike Tyson, even though he's 53 years old. But, Mike might do 4 or 5 of these at $1 million a pop. You never know. But again, look, I hope you enjoyed the show today. And if you have any questions, be sure to look at our new website. We had worked on it for several months. And we launched it this past week. And LAFootballMagazine.com. Send us any information, what you like about the show, what you don't like about the show. Be sure to hit the download of one of our shows. If you like the show a lot, if you love the show, please download one of the shows to help us get to our stats that we are trying to hit by the end of the month, because we need to get some businesses behind it so we can grow it. We'll end up making this a TV type deal. We'll film it at some point. We'll also film it and put it on the internet at some point. I don't just want to do any kind of camera. We got to buy the equipment and make it look really nice and be ready. And I look for us to be able to do remotes in the future too at businesses. But we've got to get to a certain stage to do that. And we're growing really fast. We really are. And we want to thank everyone that listens every week, and also pray for all our people in Louisiana and in the world and in the United States. And thank you. Anybody in the medical profession, thank you for your service to help heal and save lives. God bless all the medical people in the United States and in the world for doing a great job for everyone. And everybody stay safe and stay healthy and have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Sports Scouting Report podcast with Lee Brecheen.